Hello and welcome to Divorce Literacy. I'm your host, Alex Sanchez, and today I have the honor to spotlight my dear friend and colleague, Nilaja Ford. How are you, Nilaja?
I'm great, Alex. Good to be here.
Good to have you. And I wanted to definitely spotlight you because you know what? Just to start off, Nilaja was actually awarded last month. She was honored with the Paulette Brown Award for young attorneys. So definitely congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you
That's
so
good.
much.
Definitely well deserved. And so, Nilaja, tell us a little bit about who you are and a little background knowledge of not only you, but your practice.
Sure. So I am what I always consider a non-traditional law student. I worked
Yeah.
in human resources for 14 years before going back to law school. And I did so thinking that I was going to go into employment law. But of course, once I got to law school, I got bit by the family law bug and have loved family law as a practice area ever since. I did clerk in Essex County criminal division, which was unexpected. My judge got moved from family to criminal right before I started, but it actually gave me a even larger skill set in ways that I find a lot very helpful in the family area. So after that, I worked as a prosecutor for a bit of time, and then I went out on my own. So our firm is actually going to hit 2 years in a couple of months. So it's very exciting. We're growing, and being able to help a lot of people is always a great way to spend your day. So definitely love it doing what I do now, which is family law.
And Elijah, I come from a family of females. So anytime anytime I see a female like yourself that had the opportunity to go independent and start
Mm-hmm.
your own practice, that to me it's I mean that's difficult no matter if you're a male, female, or whatnot. That's difficult as it is, and for you
Absolutely.
to flourish with your practice, it's amazing. My hats to you. What I have to tell you, what advice do you have for those young entrepreneurs out there? Female entrepreneurs that are looking to follow your lead. What advice do you have for starting off the gate?
Well, if you really want something, it's always achievable. You just have to make a plan, prepare, do your research, make a plan and execute. So I think a lot of
Yeah,
times people second guess themselves. Myself, I'm a mom, we have so many moving pieces already. Going to law school was taking a risk, after having a successful career in a different industry. But the alternative is just never knowing, or having a dream inside of you that you've never been able to see come to fruition. So I think for me, I would have had the regret of not doing it. So I just put my energy into focusing on how to. And I think that's really why I am where I am today.
no, I think that's the worst. I think that's the worst thing a human being to go through life, having that God, what if
What if?
what if I would have just taken that step? What if? I think that bothers that'll make
A
anyone
lot of
say,
people.
right?
And we find it in our profession. I think working with couples who are divorcing, it's divorce is a what if, it's a risk. But in some situations, you have to kind of weigh the pros and the cons. So it's all about making a choice and
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
committing to that choice.
Yeah. And and speaking of divorce, as you have many years of dealing with divorce cases, Elijah, and as you know, no two case is alike, or each one is unique in its own way. What advice do you have for that individual, for that client that's entertaining the thought of divorce, or looking to start a process in divorce? What advice would you give that individual?
I typically say start with speaking to someone who actually knows the law.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I have a lot of clients who will sign up and do a consultation with me, but they said, well, I've talked to my friend who got a divorce. I've talked to that person who's gotten divorced. I've read this on the internet, so there's a lot of misinformation that it's almost like when you go Google your symptoms and you're like, oh, everything is equals death, right? When you're Googling on the internet
Yeah.
about so it's similar with divorce. Talk to someone who actually can walk you through the process of what it looks like, what certain things mean legally, certain definitions, because while you're making a choice, you want to be well informed. So I always say start with a professional. It's great that, you may have two cousins who, have been through it, but they can't tell you the law. And especially if there's been time or laws have changed, they can't tell you what has changed. So I always say, even if you're not actually ready to pull the, quote unquote trigger, at least get the information so you can make a decision one way or the other, whether to stay or to go, with the full breadth of what you need to know before starting that process. So that's my number one. I know, people don't always do that, and sometimes go ahead and do things on their own. And then what happens when you go back to a lawyer is now you're gonna end up, it's gonna cost you more, because now somebody has to come clean up what maybe you started improperly. So my advice is definitely just to make sure that you get the information first. So talking to someone like yourself, Alex, or somebody like me, before you take these steps. And again, it goes back to being aware, being well informed, and also being prepared, because it is a big step.
The key word there is the laws changing, and like you said, Nilaja, in your profession and in my world, laws change every year.
All the time.
So,
Yep.
you have clients that, like you mentioned, clients that, did a transaction years ago, and now, they still want those. And same thing, I've had cases where they're telling the attorney the law instead of them getting the law from the guidelines.
Correct.
Law from the attorney. And folks, guidelines change, every year,
All the time.
So whatever benefits or whatever rights you had, it's not the same today. So that's key. Definitely consult with a divorce attorney, a professional like Nilaja, and definitely get it straight up from directly from an attorney. What kind of documentation should an individual have, or should they bring to your office in order to have a consultation with you? Or should they even have financial documents ready, or what?
Yeah. So I say typically, I don't want to look at anybody's financial information during a consultation. I'm taking more basic facts to know what type of case this is. So I'm going to ask, baseline items. Do you work? Does the other person work? About how much do you make? About how much do they make? Have you guys filed taxes together? Do you own a home? Do you own cars? Or do you have children? What are their ages? So like, I'm getting more demographic things where I can issue spot as an attorney what type of case this is likely to be. I don't like to accept financial documents until I don't want anybody's information until they've, retained my services. But in terms of what documents are needed for a divorce, tax returns, it should have at least 2 years, if possible. Current pay stubs. So like three stubs at a time are what's looked at for any given point in time to get an average. And those typically can be updated as the divorce process goes on. But so current pay stubs, tax returns, and then any other sources of income. So whether you're on disability, whether there's child support coming from another former spouse, or, other income sources, and debt. You should know what your debt profile looks like. So absolutely. I always encourage people to pull their credit statement. Their credit report to see what's open in your name, because that comes up a lot. People have been opening stuff in the other or without the other's knowledge. So we want to know what the debt looks like. So all of those things we would be asking for when we were filing a divorce. And in New Jersey, we do a form called a case information statement, which literally is going to go through how much do you spend on haircuts? How much do you spend on your lights? It goes through so many different categories of spending. And it gives an actual picture of what we need to do to see what the full financial picture is. And in terms of making global settlements and things like that, we want to make sure that the person's lifestyle is able to be maintained after a divorce as best as possible.
Folks, I've had cases, I've had work cases with Nilaja, and I have to tell you that the way she puts these budgets together for the clients, and she pretty much tells you, you can afford this, you can't afford this, and that's exactly what you need, is pretty much a game plan, a map to know where you at financially and where you need to be, and that's key in a divorce case. Nilaja, let me ask you a question. What makes a successful divorce in your opinion?
No fighting. I mean, it's simple, but you know, the best divorces to me are people who can be mature enough to say, hey, this relationship may not be working for us
Right.
romantically, or you know, for whatever reasons, right? But we may have children, we may have things, or at some point we're friends. We're able to separate out our, you know, discontent or disagreement
Right.
and focus on the next steps of our lives. So especially when kids are involved, we want to be able to co-parent successfully. So those types of divorces are the best, because you have two people committed to at least the children to
Yeah.
be civil through a process.
Right.
And I do collaborative divorces as well. Those are my favorite because both parties come to the table and we work it out together, the three of us. And, you know, I'm not either person's lawyer. I'm just helping them navigate through what makes sense and what guidelines are and what, you know, typical standard language should be. But those couples to me are the most successful divorcing couples, ones that can kind of get past the emotional piece and understand the legality of what the divorce process is, because it really boils down to separating stuff. You know, I wish during the divorce process I could help people feel better about it, but that's not exactly my role as a legal professional. It's more or less being able to dissolve. You know, I always say marriage is almost like a business. So it's almost like mergers and acquisitions, you know, and so
Absolutely.
dissolve the entity that is the
Absolutely.
marriage.
Absolutely. Now, I don't think I've ever shared this with you, but you know, I actually went through divorce. You know, so I know exactly the hardship and the pain an individual is going through, emotional stress and whatnot. Um, and you know, our divorce started very amicably. You know, like we understood. Okay, you got this here. You know, you know, everything went well, and then you know, going back to what you said, you know, we started listening to
other yeah,
family members, and you know, oh, well, you deserve this. Now, wow, well, what do you mean? You know, my cousin got a divorce 5 years ago, and he got this,
yeah,
and you know,
yeah.
and it escalated the you know, all the divorce process, and we ended up, you know, prolonging the divorce, and you know, it wasn't amicable anymore, and in the long run, you know, we after with the divorce, we actually remained friends, and we're like, it would have cost so much less had we done this the right way, you know, done it, you know, amicably, and yeah, you know, and so that advice that you gave us, as far as you know, the ones that don't argue is the best. It's true. I mean, from experience, it's the best case divorce situations.
I always say the only people that win in a contentious divorce are the attorneys. That's it.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, or
Right.
other experts and professionals that have to be called in, that they're the only people who gain something from that.
Right.
Yeah. So to add insult to injury, yes, you might be in an argument, but now you're going to get a big bill. That's not fun. So
Right.
I tell people to be very conscientious of what is worth it. What is it worth the fight?
Right. Right.
Typically, it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
So someone that's, you know, going through this separation, and now they need to get, you know, advice from an attorney, and you know, no one, you know, they don't know anyone, and let's say they go on Google and they search for an attorney, you know, and you know, what criteria do you recommend for that individual to look for in an attorney? Like, what should they be looking for? What kind of you know, what kind of qualifying questions should they ask this attorney before retaining that their services?
So this piece of it, I say sometimes word of mouth is more helpful for. But people don't just necessarily go with the first person you speak to. Go with who you feel comfortable with.
Excellent. Yeah.
Just like we're having a conversation, if you can't have a conversation and kind of get to speak your piece and hear some good stuff back, just because a person has a lot of it doesn't mean that they're necessarily good. And divorce is one of those areas where I consider myself a family law specialist. I only do family law. But I'm not the only type of lawyer who does divorce. So some criminal attorneys will do a divorce every now and again.
Right.
Some, you know, other types of civil attorneys will just jump in, especially if they're general practitioners where they kind of we call them rent lawyers. They do whatever pays the rent. So you have to be careful.
Heard of that one,
with
right?
yeah, you have to be careful with that, because if they're not specialized,
Right.
and if your case is complex, stuff is going to fall through the cracks. They're just not going to be well versed in the law enough. So I always advocate for going with the family attorney who actually primarily practices family.
Excellent.
It's a game changer. It's a game changer. And I can tell when I'm up against attorneys that don't do family law. It's apparent, because even their arguments in front of the court are just ones that you maybe fly in criminal, maybe fly in, other types of civil cases, but family is nuanced in a very different way. So I always say, seek out a family lawyer, not just I need a lawyer that does divorce. It's definitely two different things. And again, be able to have a conversation and feel comfortable. If they rub you the wrong way on the phone, listen to your gut, and talk to more than one. If you're uncomfortable with one, try another. It depending on if there's cultural competency issues as well, or you're a person of a diverse background, find somebody who understands that. Because a lot of the time when there's cultural competence lacking, there is room for things to be missed that are very important to your case.
Great advice.
Personally.
Great advice.
So I also say throw that in there if that's a factor for you. Even if it comes down to religion and things like that. Not that lawyer has to be of the same, but they have to have an understanding to advocate for you in the best possible way. So those are my main things.
Yeah, no, and that's great advice. And I want to go back to, you said word of mouth, and I definitely recommend Nilaja at a minimum, guys. By the way, I'm including Nilaja's link to her website below this video. Please reach out to her, and at a minimum, just set up a consultation with her and get the information.
They're free.
And that was going to be my next question. By the way, we don't have this, you guys. We don't plan these questions out. What is the process for your consultation with you, Nilaja? Like, what? Tell me. Like, obviously you mentioned it's free, but what's the whole process? How do they set that up with you?
So I do a 30-minute call, and like I said, I immediately start with what's the issue, and I do issue spotting with them, and I like to go through it fairly quickly, because if you tell me a set of facts where I'm like, oh, this is should be fairly straightforward. Say you guys haven't seen each other in 20 years, no kids, no property, I'm like, we could probably get this done for you in about a week. But if you come to me and say, well, we have houses on the beach, we have multiple rental properties, kids are in private school, we're building a home, we both have kids from other marriages. I mean, like, if it gets very complex and I'm asking you those main demographic questions, I now am steering the conversation in a different place. So the initial conversation is for me to get enough information to kind of give you some type of what this would look like if you were moving forward with this process. And I also just like to get to know, I vet clients in the same way that they vet me. And that's why I don't charge for consults, because I don't actually have to take the matter. I have people that come to me and say, well, I want to take him or her down, and I want to make sure that they pay. And I don't necessarily want you as a client, because you're not going to understand the steps that, it's going to be difficult. And I can try to explain that to you in our consult. But if it's just like, oh, well, he or she did me so wrong, and revenge is my only motive, you're going to have a tough time, and you would give your attorney a tough time. So that's something where I want to know as much as they want to know if I can help them. I want to know if you're a personality that we can work together. So that's what I'm saying by having that conversation with the attorney, because they're going to ask you stuff to get information to at least answer a few of your legal questions. But also, again, it's a vetting process on both ends. And I also say that, I do 30-minute free consultations, but I also am open to doing longer consultations. Those are paid, but that's when I actually might review documents or something in advance of a call, because there might be a very specific question that somebody's looking to get answered where you don't necessarily need to retain a lawyer. So I do various parts of divorce and post divorce, judgment work, as well as child custody and child support, which are also can be post-judgment things. So it kind of depends on what the person is looking for. But the whole point on my end is to really get down to really what the issues are, so I can give some kind of legal strategy or steps moving forward for that person.
Yeah, sure. And that's great. And I didn't even think about that what you just said, Nilaja, and I think that's so interesting that so the 30-minute consultation is really to vet each other to see if it's a good match for a good working relationship between
Correct.
the attorney and the client. And I think that's key right there, because that says that you're not you're not there to just take a case. You definitely want to make sure that what that you're giving top-notch service to your client, and that you're gonna do right, obviously, by representing your client. And if the goals or the what the client is going through, like you mentioned, is vengeance, I want blood or kill, they're not going to be happy. They're not going to be happy.
They're not going to be happy with anything that I can't do anything for that, because that is not a legal thing to fix. That's not, so, and I also like to be the bearer of bad news in those initial conversations, because I have people who are just like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do the other thing, right? So I go through legal entitlement. So like certain things, this will be required of you, right? Or certain things, for people who say, I don't want to, leave my house. Okay, that's fine. But you'd be required to buy out your spouse, or they'll say, well, I put every dime into this house. Why do I have to give this other person money? It's the hardest conversation to have, because it doesn't make, I would say, common sense, but it's the law and where the terms are, so can we work out settlements that, can get closer to what you're looking to do? Possibly, but I have to be truthful about what the law says and what the status quo or what the norms typically would look like. And so I get to be the bad guy that first call, which I'd rather do from the first call than I tell you 5 calls down the line and you've already paid me money and you're like, wait, why are you just telling me this now? So I like to be very upfront and honest with my clients in that initial time. And 30 minutes sounds quick, but I've gotten it down to a science at this point of kind of where the conversation needs to be, and like to answer questions sometimes first, because people need to have an overview and then some specifics. So again, I try to make everybody's life better, not worse, but I'd rather be honest about what that is. I'm not trying to swindle anybody, and I do this because I'm passionate about this work. I'm going to get paid. I'll be fine regardless, whether it's a fit or not a fit, but I do want to make sure that I'm able to bring something of value to somebody else, as opposed to just, I can't do anything with this case or with this client. So that's.
And your practice is in New Jersey, solely in New Jersey, or is there other states that you practice?
It's only in New Jersey, full state of New Jersey though. So I have cases from Bergen down to Atlantic County. So I'm doing a literal statewide practice. And I do have associates that sometimes help me out with the parents' work, but I'm the attorney of record, like I said, all the way down the state.
Excellent. No, and that's key right there, because they have you representing them directly. So Nilaja, folks, we're not in the business. We're in the divorce practice, but we're not advocates of divorce. We're not here pushing, get a divorce. That's not what we're here for. We're here to educate, the clientele, the public, as far as what's your rights and whatnot, and what, Nilaja, as you know, when someone is tying a knot, it's so easy to tie the knot. Walk down that aisle, they
$35.
Is it really? Wow.
For the license.
Look at that. And no one gives you the laws, the regular, what are your rights? I know for a fact that the highest percentage of divorce is due to finances, so sometimes you marry into debt, not knowing, you find that out after, unfortunately, you're going through divorce, and now you're hit with all guidelines. And what advice do you have for that couple that is going down that, looking to go down the aisle, tie the knot, and, what advice would you give someone young that's looking to get married to prevent divorce? I mean, obviously you can't prevent it all the way, but, there's some things you can,
you can lessen the impacts of divorce. So I am a huge proponent of prenuptial agreement. And I call them insurance for your marriage. You know, basically you wouldn't drive your car without car insurance. You don't drive your car wanting to get into an accident every single day. But in the event that you do get into an accident, you're insured by this policy. So a prenuptial agreement is basically the same thing. I've done 3 this week, and I'm so proud of that because I always say in a perfect world, I do more prenups than divorces. You know, I would prefer that because what that means to me is a couple has had the hardest conversation with each other, and that's about where their money is and what that looks like. So if that person is $300,000 in student loan debt, you knew it before you got married, right? And that person has also agreed to hold on to that debt in the event you get divorced. But if you guys during a marriage work to pay down each other's loans, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But it's an informed decision. So going back to informed decisions. You know, if you're getting married and you're scared to talk about what you make, what debt you have, what properties you have, what inheritance you may have coming in, to me, that's a big sign that this relationship, you know, you just said it, financial reasons is on the top, maybe one of 2 things that end marriages. Probably that before infidelity sometimes. So having that conversation is very, very important. And also in a perfect world, if I could talk to couples premarital, like speak to an attorney, like know your rights, I would love to do that because it's not that it would change anybody's mind because, you know, 9 times out of 10, I'm in love, I'm getting married, but at least you've heard and you're educated about what this looks like.
Absolutely.
So I think, you know, there's no class for it. They don't require it before the divorce. I mean, before the marriage, listen to me, Freudian slip, but before the marriage. But I would say seek out some true information. Again, a consult is free, whether you get a prenup or not, you know, something to where you at least are on the same page and having the same conversations. And I do my prenup conversations with couples together. I don't do them one-on-one. So like, because again, it forces them to have the conversation once I step out the room, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And that was my whole point of asking that question, is to emphasize guys to definitely contact Nilaja, get a 30-minute consultation with her, get the advice up front, you know, before you tie the knot or afterwards, but get proper guidance, get the laws and regulations up to date through Nilaja and her firm. One question I do have, and I think you're gonna knock it out the park with this one. Is there life after divorce?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Honestly, for some people, life is just starting after the divorce. And for others, it's going to be happening better. You know, there'll be that's also my goal too. Next to having a couple that doesn't fight, having a couple who can restart successfully, you know, land well. And in a healthy and financially healthy manner, you know. So there is absolutely life. There's absolutely a way to co-parent, be friends, be cordial, you know, or never see them again, whatever your happy looks like.
Right. Yeah.
But at the same time, there's absolutely life after divorce. And funny story, I've even had couples marry each other again. So, you know, there's that. Really? So, you know, but you know, but it's also about resetting, you know, whatever that was, the old is gone and died, and the new can now bloom and blossom and be here. So there's absolutely that.
You know, I've worked on cases where Nilaja, and you know, this is going back to my community, the Latino community. You know, we have this tension of, well, you know, we don't need to speak to anyone. You know, like and I'm referring like after the divorce. You know. And I always tell them, I say, listen, you know, seek the counsel of a therapist, you know, seek it out, you know, you're still dealing with a lot of
animosity or
and,
feelings towards it.
I've had cases where, you know, after the divorce, they're jumping into another relationship without having really addressed everything you have and, you know, like everything you went through. And I always tell them, listen, get counsel. Yeah. You know, and that's the reason why the reason I bring that up is to reach out to Nilaja, because she works with a team of professionals that can definitely, she can put you in place with and in contact with.
Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of referrals to my mental health team, and that is for the same reason you just said. The healing does need to take place. I just am a big believer that it can and will. Everybody has to do the work, but it can and will, and you can be whole
No, absolutely.
after divorce. Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it takes a team.
Yeah, yeah. Nilaja, any final thoughts that you can leave us with?
I think we actually covered quite a bit. And the main thing is definitely just stick to your professionals, you know, get the information straight from, you know, the source, the horse's mouth when
Yeah.
you're doing something or contemplating something like this. And otherwise, just, you know, trust your gut in terms of feeling comfortable with a team that you've selected.
Folks, reach out to Nilaja, please. You know, I'm gonna leave her link to her website here. Reach out to her, and in the words of Nilaja, don't deal with a rental attorney. Deal with a professional. I love that, by the way. I'm gonna start using that. Deal
Yes.
with a professional that specializes in divorce,
Specialized.
and that's key. That's the whole key behind a successful divorce. And Nilaja, thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you in future ventures. Huh?
Absolutely. Alex, thank you for having me again.
Take care. Bye bye.
All right. Bye-bye.